welcome everybody to another edition of the Dad at Arms channel. I'm your host, Colt, the Dad at Arms, and joining me today we have Matthew Brown. Welcome, Matthew.
Nice to be with you, Colt.
Yeah. So Matthew is joining us today because he is the producer for the Masters of the Universe Tales from Eternia series on YouTube, the new short format episodic series that I think we just had. Episode 3 is the latest one that dropped last week. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Episode 4 comes out this week.
Yes. Okay. So, Matthew, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell people kind of what it is you do, kind of your background, your history, and all that kind of good stuff.
Thanks so much. So, I'm an animation producer from South Africa, now living in London, and I specialize in long form television animation, both 3D and 2D. And this particular show is a reboot of He-Man, really. And I think Mattel are testing the waters. They haven't said anything about a season 2, but they're obviously seeing how people react and if it does well. And they wanted to bring out this reboot at a similar time to the live action movie, which is obviously doing well and advertised everywhere. And so I don't work for Mattel, but I produce the service side for Snipple Animation, which is a 2D studio based in London and the Philippines. And we had about 8 or 9 permanent staff in London and almost 800 animators in the Philippines, where we make shows like Phineas and Ferb, Garfield, Rick and Morty, Unikitty, shows like that. So we were a premier studio, which I think is why Mattel wanted to work with us. And so my role in the show is to produce from scripts all the way to final delivery, except voices and music.
Okay.
So everything else, design, storyboards, animation, sound, post-production, etc. Yeah.
Awesome. That's cool. Obviously a really cool pedigree that you come from with all the projects that the Snipple Animation has worked on, and so that's really cool to hear. Was there in regards to this show itself, it is on YouTube, were there any plans to have it anywhere else, like on any streaming services, or was YouTube kind of always the plan?
From the get-go, Mattel wanted to release this on YouTube.
Okay.
Because the viewers achievable on YouTube is so huge compared to the viewers achievable on a satellite channel or even a streaming platform. And so I think they weren't focused on monetizing those viewers upfront. They just wanted to build an audience to see if people respond to it, if people are talking about it, if people are perhaps even buying the toys. And so, yeah, YouTube, the viewership is just enormous.
That's awesome.
So their plan was to release on YouTube first, and more people are doing this instead of going the more traditional route of satellite, cable, streamers, things like that, which I think is exciting because you can watch the show for free. It's accessible anywhere in the world to anyone with an internet connection. So I think that's a great call.
Yeah, it's a really good way for anybody to jump in and learn, obviously like legacy fans, but even bring in new fans to kind of learn about what this property is all about.
Yeah.
And like you were saying earlier, this is a reboot of He-Man, and so it's an introduction to, bring in new fans, but there's also stuff there that old fans will appreciate and recognize.
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up in the 80s on He-Man, Thundercats, and a couple of other shows. Those were the iconic shows. And so this show, I think, aims to appeal to people like me, people who grew up on He-Man, and a young audience, and hopefully both, moms and dads who have kids who are into animation and being able to watch it together. I think that's the key. And yeah, we'll see how it does. But I think it's a great show.
Awesome. So there are 20 episodes for this first season.
Yes.
They're about 4 minutes each one, give or take. Like we said earlier, we are currently on episode 4. Comes out this week and they come out each Friday.
Yes.
On the Mattel Adventures YouTube channel. With rebooting a franchise like Masters of the Universe, what was kind of the, I guess, what were kind of the marching orders from Mattel for you guys in making this show?
It's a good question. So they, of course, wanted to remain true to the original style and feel of the show. It's got to be in the same universe. It's got to feel like the original show. You don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but also times have changed. It's been decades since He-Man, and the world is perhaps more of a liberal place. There is a better understanding of all kinds of things, from race, gender, positioning of culture, all kinds of things. So I think that Mattel had a line to walk, keeping the feel of the old show, which is action and adventure and sword fights, while making sure that it fits in with a modern storytelling technique. And but I think they were very specific in things like the character Teela, for example. Maybe in the 80s show, Teela wouldn't have had that much to do, or would have taken a step back to He-Man. Whereas now, she is an equal to all the other characters and can take the lead, etc. So I think there was a bit of a balancing act from Mattel's side to make it modern, but make sure it feels like the original show.
And so far, based on episodes we've seen, it definitely feels very much like a new version of the old 80s show. It's got it's lighthearted, it's fun, it's got some humor to it, and it's also got, that key element of a moral lesson kind of baked into it. It's not, the old show kind of had it right at the end where a character would come out and explain, the moral lesson to the audience. This show doesn't do that. It more, makes it a part of the overall narrative.
It's a bit more subtle. It's a bit less heavy-handed and kind of in-your-face moral lesson, because we know that kids nowadays they're used to that, and they will spot that kind of fake education or forced morality very, very quickly. They're much more savvy than for example, I was when I was 8. So yeah, I think that we and Mattel have walked a good line to keeping the balance.
Very cool. How long has this been in production from, I guess, when it was first kind of conceptualized to now when we're getting the episodes?
I don't know when it was kind of floated as an idea, but certainly very soon after people at Mattel started to talk about making a live action He-Man after the success of Barbie, the team started to speak about, well, the core of He-Man is really the animated show and the toys. So I think probably a few years ago they started to float this idea after the success of Barbie, and we heard about it or were approached by Mattel in mid 2025, and we started going forward with the project in late 2025, and actually we had a restart much earlier this year where we had done some design, we had done some work, and it was great, but the higher up creative team at Mattel thought, it's not quite the right tone, and it's a little bit young skewing, and they wanted to just tweak it and make it a little bit older.
Okay.
And so that's what we started doing pretty much in January this year. Is we tweaked it a bit, and I think it's a better show, actually. Of course, at the time we were like, "Oh no, please!" But I think actually it was the right call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. In terms of like things like character designs and kind of the overall look of Eternia and places like Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain, what was kind of the process of that, the evolution of that? I'm assuming it started with the old Filmation show from the 80s and kind of those designs, and then went from there. Would that be correct to say?
Yes, certainly the 80s show is the core art and inspiration for the show. There is a difference between the Filmation intellectual property and the Mattel intellectual property, which I don't know much about, but there are different things, and Filmation can do so much and Mattel can do so much. But obviously, Mattel wanted the show to be instantly recognizable by people who grew up in the 80s, and with a slightly fresher look. And of course, that show was hand animated on cells, and we're using a digital technique. So there's that difference. But definitely, the brief was make it feel like home. Castle Grayskull, when you see Castle Grayskull, you know what it is. Also, there's a range of really cool toys that Mattel are releasing, and so we looked at images of those toys to make sure that they didn't have to be exact, but there's a link. You see the toy, you see maybe the live action film, and you see the animated series, and they're in the same universe.
Yeah, they all kind of exist together, and I think that's something that fans kind of pick up on. If you take the look of He-Man, for example, in this show, he kind of has like the battle skirt that the movie version of He-Man has instead of the furry briefs that the old 80s show had.
Yeah.
And then and then his sword is kind of based on the old mini comics design of the sword, where it kind of has the more angles and stuff like that. And then Castle Grayskull itself kind of looks more in line with what the movie design is. So you can kind of see, at least for me, I can see kind of all these different inspirations kind of come together to create.
Yeah. There's an amalgamation and overarching feel to it, and of course we took our guidance from the Mattel brand team, who live breathe, eat, and sleep He-Man. And they just there's a point where you can't really describe what is the perfect He-Man look, but because they know it so well, and they know every iteration, every comic, every show, every film. We relied heavily on them because they can kind of pinpoint a slight tweak to a character, slightly less angular, means it's a right fit. So that was great to have their advice.
That's awesome. What I really liked, especially in this last episode, is we got to see a character like Faker introduced into the show. Now he obviously existed in the toy line, and in the old '80s show, there was an episode where Skeletor creates a robot version of He-Man. I don't think it's ever called Faker by name, and it certainly doesn't have the blue, skin color that the toy had. And so it was fun to see this new series lean into that and give him the blue skin and make him just as powerful as He-Man. And I like the little play on it where, I guess spoilers for people who haven't watched episode 3, but he shares He-Man's morality system because he's an exact copy of He-Man, so He-Man's able to convince him to be a good guy. It's fun. It's a fun little tweak on this classic, lore and ideas that we grew up with. I think
the lore is the right word, because there are a lot of different opinions as to what this character looks like in this version, which I find fascinating. You would think that a brand like He-Man would have very, very set rules, and this is the exact version of this character. But actually, the team at Mattel take a lot of inspiration or reference from even fan art and other people's websites who they like yours, and people who are publishing the history and the lore of characters, and the art team at Mattel really take that on board as well, which I thought was really, really great. They're not just, they don't have their Bible and they're like, no. Grizzlor is this shade of brown, and etc. They're like, well, this was amazing. Let's bring in some of that, which I thought was really great.
That's fun. Kind of speaking more along this idea of the lore of Masters of the Universe, we have important character connections that exist throughout the history of this. Things like Tila being the daughter of the sorceress, and also the adopted daughter of Duncan, Man at Arms.
Yes.
There's an ongoing kind of will they won't they kind of romantic tension between He-Man and Tila. Are these kind of things that will come to fruition or be in play at all in the YouTube series?
I think some of them, but mostly in season 1, we were concerned with not breaking any obvious lore and not letting the cat out of the bag with some relationships and some known lore. And then if there's a season 2, which I really think they should make, and I hope there is, I think that more of that will come into play. So season 1 was more about reintroducing the characters, reintroducing the world, setting the tone, not blowing up any secret information, the basics like Prince Adam and He-Man, etc. And then I think in future seasons there could be an opportunity to start to play with that, because of course a lot of young fans don't know the 80s lore. So I think the Mattel team didn't want to start adding too much confusing secrets.
Kind of they don't want to run before they can walk.
Yeah,
Kind of
exactly.
want to build to these kind of deeper
Yeah,
ideas. Things
exactly.
that are happening.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. Now, in terms of the length of the episodes, they are short episodes.
Yes.
Like we said, they're about 4 minutes in length. Was that always the plan to have these short form episodes? Was there ever a version of this that had longer episodes?
It's interesting because you would, in one sense, you feel like they could be longer, but social media, and I'm including YouTube in this, are a focus on shorter and shorter episodes. But I think they found the right kind of duration, where you've got a main plot and then a subplot going in there, and that's good for the audience. Let's say the audience is like, the main audience of kids is like 9 to 12,
Mm-hmm.
boys skewed. So that kind of 4 minutes with an A plot and a B plot is probably the right fit. But early on, there was talk of it being longer, 6 minutes. And when we got to the script writing process, you want to try and reduce it and get rid of stuff that doesn't drive the plot forward.
Yeah.
And so, and to keep the action high. And so it kind of ended up at 4 minutes. And the nice thing with YouTube is you don't have to hit an exact 4.5 minutes, or, it can be whatever is the perfect length for the story.
Very cool. We talked a little bit earlier kind of about the visual look of the characters and kind of the design inspirations, and you mentioned the toys were an important part of that. Now, I don't know if this is something you would know. This is probably more on Mattel's side of things, but do you know if there's any plans to make toys of these specific designs at any point, based on specifically on the YouTube series itself?
There is talk of that, and there is also, it's kind of also a bit in reverse. So there are toys possibly coming, where we have the animated show has taken its cue from the toys,
Okay.
that we've been shown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, cool.
Yeah,
that's one of those tricky questions where it's like, how do I ask it, and then how do you answer it?
My understanding is that there are more toys coming, and that we've taken our cue from those toys, and I mean, I'm going to be buying some of them because they're really cool.
Very cool. Well, they're fun. I think that's the best thing about Masters of the Universe is the toys. The toys are just so much fun to have in your hand and play with. And
yeah, I mean, of course, I was hoping to get a box of free of toys, but I don't know if that's how it works anymore.
It's always good to get a good box full of toys. That's
Yeah.
always the dream.
Yeah, merchandise is pretty much why we're in this industry.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of one of Mattel's core focuses is the merchandise side of things. They're in, they want to sell toys.
Yeah, absolutely.
So very cool. Let's see here. I think that's about all the questions I have. I just want to make sure. I guess a question I want to ask is, in terms of making a show like this, and as much as you're involved with it, like you said, you're not involved with the voice recording or the music implementation and all that kind of stuff. But can you kind of tell me what the job detail was from kind of beginning to the end of where you're involved with it? Can you kind of give me an idea of the process?
My role,
Mm-hmm.
or
kind of your role, yeah, kind of your role, and then I guess overseeing other aspects of it that you would be included in.
So as producer, my role is really to make sure that everything stays on, to create a schedule and a budget, and then to make sure everything stays on schedule and on budget, and to acquire the right artists and creative and technical services that the show needs, really, and to keep communication between the client, in this case Mattel, and our animation team, our post-production team, and our sound team, etc., knowing that there is this deadline that pretty much can't be moved, because they've said this is the line in the sand, this is when the show goes on air. So that's basically the role. In terms of the production, we start with the script, strangely enough, and then the script, and then we design the characters, the backgrounds, the props in that script, and get it approved by Mattel. And then I think the most important aspect of 2D animation is what we call the animatic, where we record the voices, He-Man, Teela, Man-at-Arms, etc., and we draw a storyboard of just a black and white sketch, really, of what we think the show, the episode will look like, with the different shots and the close-ups and the wides and the expressions. And we put that together in a 4-minute movie, essentially. And that for me is the most important part of the process. It's kind of like drawing the architectural drawings for a building. You build up to that process, and you can't move forward without that. And that's the kind of the blueprint. And then, of course, we design all the various assets. And because we are a 2D digital pipeline, we do different angles of each character and each prop, and very intricate drawings, paintings, really, of the backgrounds.
Okay.
And then we put them all together. So we put a background with the sound, with the props, with the characters for the duration of that shot, and we animate that shot. What we normally do is we do a rough version that we call keys, and then we do a clean version, a polished version, which we call tweens, and then we put it all together in an edit, show it to the client, and then we start adding sound effects, music, visual effects like water or lightning, and in He-Man there's a lot of every episode has I have the power scene, and it's always slightly different, and there's lightning, and there's dust coming out of the ground, and there's camera shake, and all kinds of things. So we work on that, and then we do a mix, a sound mix, so everything sounds good, and we do a color grade, and it tweaks everything. It looks good, and there we are.
Very cool.
Yeah.
About how long does it take to make one episode of the show, kind of from beginning to final?
So I like to keep things easy and make sure that every department has a week to do their little bit. And maybe that means I only need one person, or maybe it means I need 12 people in animation. But if every department gets a week to do a thing, and then it moves to the next department, and that department gets to the next episode, it means there's no gaps, there's no delays, and it kind of just flows like you were, not to undermine it, but like cans of soup. You're like you build the thing and you fill it with the stuff and you put the label on it and you put one step at a time, one a week, and we have about 10 or 11 departments. So each episode takes about 10 or 11 weeks starting.
Okay.
But of course,
everything.
But of course, at the front, we have a bit of a ramp up where we're testing designs, and we're before we really get going with the first episode, designing the main characters and playing with the look. But essentially, each episode is kind of 11 weeks, 12 weeks.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. One kind of final question for you, and this is kind of more of a fun one. You said that you grew up with He-Man and all that. What is your, I guess, what is your favorite character in Master Universe?
When I was a kid, I was given a Christmas present, which was a character called Grislaw.
Yes.
And a furry character with a kind of halter, and he had a crossbow. So I loved Grislaw. Grislaw was my favorite because I actually had the toy in South Africa growing up. But when I started work in the TV industry as a runner, I was really, really skinny. Unfortunately, I'm not now. But my nickname was Skeletor. So I still have like I still think of myself being called Skeletor fondly when I see Skeletor. Yeah. So Grizzly and Skeletor are my favorites.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Now, with the mention of Grizzlor, and we also kind of mentioned him earlier, and if you can't answer this, I understand, but is there a possibility that we might see Grizzlor show up in this series at some point?
There's no Grizzlor in season 1, but I have made my feelings very clear about Grizzlor. So hopefully in season 2, but I hope I'm allowed to say that there is Mossman coming during the season, and the design of Mossman is probably my favorite, and the toy of Mossman, the new toy of Mossman, is probably my favorite. I just love it. I'm definitely buying Mossman first.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, good. That's kind of all the questions I have for you for now. Brilliant. Is there anything else that you think needs to be mentioned about it, or do you think we kind of covered?
No, I think we kind of covered most things. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. For people out there, this is obviously if you want to be known and found online, where can people find you and follow your work?
Probably on Instagram, which is Matt_Brown_I_am. But I'm not that great at posting, so people might be disappointed. But that's how they can find probably the best way to. And as I'm allowed to, I'll post more little tidbits.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much again for joining me today and talking about this stuff. This is exciting. Obviously, big fan of He-Man. Kind of been part of my life ever since I was a kid. Being there, since the beginning of it. So I'm just so thrilled to see that we're in 2026. We're still getting new He-Man stuff. It's exciting. So.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting, and I think there's still a place for it in the modern world to excite kids and spark some memories to old people like me.
Yes. Very cool. Well, thank you to our guest, Matthew Brown, for joining us today. And thanks to everybody out there watching. Please subscribe, and please follow the Battle Ram or the He-Man.org website. They're doing a lot of really good work over there in keeping everybody up to date about anything He-Man, She-Ra related. So
nice.
And until next time, good journey.